Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Colonati. Today I'm going to give you my thoughts on this massive beast of a book, Cryptonomicon by Neal Stephenson. This book is in fact so heavy I am not going to hold it during this entire review because I think I might break my wrist, so I'm just going to put this down now. I did not enjoy this book as much as I wanted to or as much as I was expecting to. Like all of the other Stephenson novels I have read so far, the plot of Cryptonomicon is hard to describe. It is so complex, there's so much going on. There are all these little bits woven throughout the story that some things don't even seem important until like the very last page, and then you get like this call back to something 500 pages ago and it just suddenly falls into place, and it's hard to describe that. So I'm just going to focus on the four main point of view characters and what their storylines are kind of about. The first one is Laurence Waterhouse. He is a mathematical genius who ends up in the US Navy during World War II, and then he ultimately ends up working in the code-breaking effort kind of at Bletchley Park during the rest of the war. Then there is Bobby Shafto. He is described as a gung-ho Marine raider. He does end up in Division 2702, which is running around as part of Laurence Waterhouse's efforts at Bletchley Park to plant fake evidence about how the Allies know about the movements of the Axis troops and navies and so on, because we've broken the Enigma code, but we are trying to mathematically create like white noise around the world to keep the Axis people, like another character named Rudy, from figuring out that we have figured out Enigma. So Shafto goes on some of these ludicrous missions to plant fake evidence, and like he doesn't know what's going on either. Nobody knows what's going on. It's very ridiculous. The other World War II storyline is Goto Dengo. He is a Japanese soldier. He's part of some like suicide project to dig like this system of caves and bury gold there. And then we have our fourth storyline, which is in the present day. It's Randy Waterhouse, the grandson of Laurence Waterhouse. He is also really good at math. He's a computer nerd. Maybe I should say computer geek. Really into, business networking and internet infrastructure and all that. He's a network administrator geek in the 1990s. And so he's in the 1990s, and it's a modern day storyline. And he and his friend Avi are setting up a business venture that starts out in the Philippines as basically a way to bring really profitable internet connectivity pipes as undersea cables to the Philippines and then sell Pinoy-grams to people, video messages. This then morphs into a business venture to set up a data haven in a fictional country called Kinakuda. I assume it's in the same area as the Philippines. And then that morphs into this bigger issue of online banking and creating a digital currency and how to back that digital currency with gold, so there's a standard that makes the currency worth something. Ultimately, the whole story is about people keeping secrets and people trying to find gold. What I really focused on while reading this was the cryptography. I really loved Laurence Waterhouse's storyline. I really haven't read that much about Bletchley Park, but the stuff described in there about Alan Turing and the stuff they were doing at Bletchley Park and the mathematical formulas involved in the cryptanalysts' work and stuff in Waterhouse's storyline was really cool to read. I basically read the entire book for about a fourth of it. What I just want to say right now is that this is a good book. It just really didn't become my cup of tea. When I was reading Anathem earlier in April, I think I've mentioned to some people there was this point about 150 pages into Anathem where it just suddenly clicked with me. Everything just mashed together into this perfect story, and I was just hooked. And I kept expecting, while reading Cryptonomicon, for that same aha moment to happen while I was reading, and it didn't really happen for me. Like I said, there are basically three reasons why this book didn't work so well for me. The number one problem for me was that I would classify this as basically World War II historical fiction and not speculative fiction or science fiction or cyberpunk or anything else that I have read by Stephenson so far. Out of all of the history that I have ever learned, the World War II era is the one historical period, the one wartime period that I don't really enjoy reading about. In fact, I actively avoid reading a lot of stuff about World War II. And this is just an aversion thing. I have learned about World War II. I do understand why it's a very important thing to know about, but every time I tend to pick up a book that has something to do with World War II, I end up going down this rabbit hole of Wikipedia surfing and making myself ill because I just keep reading about all the massacres and the atrocities and the Holocaust and the genocides, and it's not a place I like my mind to go to. I don't know why this always happens to me, but it's very predictable. If I pick up something about World War II, I will end up depressing myself on Wikipedia at some point. And yeah, that totally happened to me while reading this book. I just didn't enjoy or become very invested in a lot of the detail from that time period. Bobby Shafto ends up wandering around Manila just staring at piles of dead bodies. And no, I don't want to read that all the time, you know. So I would say, I mean, if you like World War II history, then this is like the geekiest book ever for you and you'll probably love it. I didn't enjoy it mainly because so much of this, 3 of the 4 storylines are definitely set in World War II era. The second thing is that it was too long. And not that I don't enjoy a long book that just builds up all the storylines and builds up the themes and has lots of callbacks and everything. That's really enjoyable. Like I said, I loved Anathem. I would read another 900 pages of Anathem if he wrote another 900 pages of that story. But my problem with this one is that there were a lot of these digressions and rather unnecessary paragraphs and sentences and entire pages sometimes that were just build up to a geeky joke. I like geek humor. Don't get me wrong, but at some point, about halfway through the book probably, I just went, I want this to come all together into a story that I really become invested in, and I kept skimming more and more of these digressions and tangentially related information that didn't seem, I couldn't tell what was actually important to know later in the book, what was a throwaway detail, or what was going to be a plot device later on. So, you know, I was bored reading pages of some of the stuff, but I felt like I had to read it so that I wouldn't miss out on something cool in the future. Bored or cool, bored or cool. So, yeah, some of those things were really funny. I mean, the Epiphyte 2 business plan was just, I laughed while reading. That was just perfect. But then there was Randy's email about their first excursion to go look at some gold in the jungle, and I was just, can we just get to the point here? Yeah, that's mainly what I felt like, is that there were just too many branching off points in the story. I couldn't keep track of them all, and because I wasn't interested in a lot of them, I didn't bother to, and that was detrimental to my enjoyment of some of the later things in the book, I think. My other mild gripe is that all of these characters seem kind of emotionally screwed up. Like, I was really wondering how much emotional intelligence some of these people had. Waterhouse was actually a fascinating character for me to read about. He's a genius. He's basically like a savant, and he really doesn't have great social skills, but it worked for me. Like, there was something about his personality and how he just kind of ignored other people and just went on with his life and his math that I really liked. I really enjoyed reading almost all of his storyline. But then all the other characters seemed quite the same way. I like geek culture. I'm not like the biggest geek of all time, but it basically just seemed to be saying that all these really smart people couldn't find their socks on their feet. I mean, they're not dumb, they're just not good at functioning in society. You know, Waterhouse is probably the most extreme example in some ways, but just all the characters were like that. And I want a smart person who, you know, isn't just, you know, somebody more like Avi, who seems to know how to actually get along with people, but also is really intelligent and like technological stuff as well. And then all like 3 of the 4 men's storylines at the very end of the book basically end up with these long passages about how they need to have sex. You don't need to tell me like 5 times that this dude hasn't had an ejaculation in 3 weeks, okay? I mean, what? I didn't really see what this had to do with the story most of the time. It was funny once, but then it wasn't funny after that. I was more like, can you just focus on the treasure hunt and less about how your characters aren't having sex because they're, I don't know, in prison? or in the middle of the jungle with no women around them. I mean, come on, of course they're not having sex in situations like that. Anyway, it is funny now that I think about it, but Cryptonomicon by Neal Stephenson, it is packed full of all sorts of geeky, cool things if you want to know about cryptography or, you know, pretty interesting predictions about internet connectivity and networking made in the 1990s. And also the online banking digital currency thing was, what's the word, prescient? Yeah, that was pretty cool. But mainly the cryptography and the math, guys. Oh yeah. This is the conclusion to my thoughts on Cryptonomicon by Neal Stephenson. I'm aware that that was kind of more a ramble than anything that makes any amount of sense. I apologize, but I just had to get some things off my chest here. If you've read this book and you want to talk about it, please let me know down below. I would love to know what people think about this book compared to other Neal Stephenson novels. It's very different from the other stuff I've read by him so far, and I'd love to know if people who've read his entire body of work or more of his work than I have, what do you think about this book in comparison to the rest of his bibliography? And if you've read the Baroque cycle, please let me know as well. Now, I just now, of course, know that the Baroque cycle is kind of related to the stuff going on in Cryptonomicon. It takes place like hundreds of years before, but has like Enoch Arut and the Societas Eruditorum or whatever in it. And I gotta say my enthusiasm for reading the Baroque cycle has kind of gone down a little bit since I didn't enjoy Cryptonomicon nearly as much as I wanted to and that I expected to. So if you can enlighten me anywhere about the connections between these books, let me know that too. And I'm going to stop talking now, and I'll be back to talk at you once again in another video soon. Bye.